You've seen people hold their breath. You've even watched them try to stay awake for days. But there's something unnatural about someone who simply stops blinking, who locks their eyes open and never lets them shut again. It starts off subtle, strange even, like a game. But what if someone really could do it? No blinking, no closing, no relief. What if the moment she stopped blinking, people around her started dying? This is not a myth. Not a creepypasta. This happened. And by the time they realized what she had become, it was already too late. They say death started with her first unbroken stare. And it only stopped when there was no one left to look at. Ada Nyoni was just 14 when her story began to turn. A bright girl from the quiet Tanzanian town of Itigi, she had always been considered peculiar, but in the harmless kind of way. Her father used to say she had clouds in her head and stars in her mouth. She barely spoke, but when she did, her words came out like poetry. She wasn't loud. She wasn't angry. She didn't cry much. But she would stare, sometimes for hours, at trees, at cracks in the wall, at people who made the mistake of trying to catch her eye. It wasn't until that one Thursday that everything changed. She was in school, sitting at the back of Mrs. Shabani's literature class, when a classmate named Dotto leaned over and whispered, "Ada, you good? You haven't blinked in 10 minutes." Ada didn't respond. Her eyes remained fixed on the window. Not moving. Not fluttering. Dotto waved her hand in front of Ada's face. Nothing. Even when the teacher came over, Ada didn't move. She wasn't catatonic. Just alert. Her pupils followed movements. She turned her head. But her eyelids, dry and red, refused to close. They took her to the school nurse, who was baffled. There was no nerve damage. No pain response. Just a girl who said, in a voice that chilled the bones of everyone in that room, "I don't need to blink anymore. I see everything now." Her parents took her to the district clinic, but every doctor was equally puzzled. They gave her eye drops. They dimmed the lights. They even tried to gently close her eyelids while she slept. That's when they realized she wasn't sleeping anymore. For 3 days straight, Ada sat on her bed, unmoving, unblinking, her eyes wide and dry like glass. Her mother tried to cradle her, weeping, pleading for the girl to just shut her eyes and rest. But Ada only whispered, "They won't let me. They say I have to keep watching." Her mother froze. "Who?" "The ones behind the wall," she whispered. "The ones that blink for us when we stop." The neighbor, Ms. Kira, was found in her hut, eyes gouged, lips sealed shut with what looked like thread from her own clothes. The police said it was some kind of suicide. But her son, barely 9, insisted he'd seen something. She was screaming, he said. Screaming because someone was watching her. Someone through the cracks. The only strange thing? Her body was found with her head turned directly toward Ada's home. Toward Ada's room. When the investigators came, they found Ada sitting by her window, staring outward. Not moving. Not blinking. "Has she moved since yesterday?" the chief asked her father. "No," he said, exhausted. "She watches. That's all she does now." And behind her, a wall of drawings, hundreds of them, had been taped up. Scratched in charcoal and pencil, all of them showed the same thing. A figure without eyes, standing behind other people, watching as they bled. "They say she's been cursed," one neighbor muttered. "Which child?" another hissed. "She's opened the eye that should have stayed shut." Only her younger brother, Moza, still spoke to her like she was real. He would sit beside her and hum the lullabies their mother used to sing. But on the 5th night, he stopped singing. Because he had a dream so dark and disorienting that he woke up screaming. He said he saw Ada standing at the foot of his bed, her eyes glowing like 2 dying stars. And behind her, stretching from the wall to the ceiling, was a creature tall and bent, its head twitching violently every time Ada blinked, which in the dream she finally did. But each blink made someone vanish. First his friend, then his father, then himself. When he woke up, he had blood trickling from his ear, and he refused to go near his sister again. By the end of the week, 3 more people were dead, each found in horrifying conditions. One with their tongue cut out and placed in a bowl of milk. Another strung from a tree, eyes staring at the sun. The last was a teacher from Ada's school, Mrs. Shabani. Her body was discovered in the staff bathroom, but something had scratched the inside of the mirror so deeply that the glass was nearly opaque. Carved into it, barely legible, "I watched too long." And Ada. She remained by her window, drawing, watching. The drawings got worse. Now there were symbols. Strange circular marks like eyes, embedded inside concentric patterns that resembled ritualistic designs. No one taught her these. No one in town recognized them. The elders were called. They believed in returning eyes. In watchers from beyond the veil, spirits who peered back when the living stared too long into nothing. There were stories, old stories, of children born during a solar eclipse with a gift for sight beyond sight. Most never lived past infancy. When Ada's birth date was checked, it chilled the oldest elder's blood. A total eclipse had happened that very night. And her mother? She had gone into labor during the blackout. No one had remembered this detail until now. "She's not cursed," the old man said. "She's the vessel. The lid has been removed." They urged the parents to blindfold her, to cut her off from mirrors, reflections, eyes of any kind. But by then, it was too late. Ada had drawn one final image. A drawing that made even the elder tremble. It was of her own face, split down the middle. One half human. The other hollow. As if the inside had been scooped out and filled with darkness. At the bottom of the page, in childish but shaky handwriting, it read, "Every time someone blinks, they go away. I stopped blinking. I'm keeping you alive." What do you do with a girl who no longer sleeps, no longer blinks, and insists she's holding back something from the other side? Who draws people dying before they die? Who says she's watching not because she wants to, but because she has to? The deaths weren't random. Each person had something in common. They had looked her in the eyes. That's when the town made a rule. Don't look at her. But the damage was already done. Ada wasn't just a girl anymore. She was a mirror. And the more people stared, the more the thing inside her blinked back. And it wasn't done yet. Because that night, the power went out across the town. And when the lights returned, the drawings on Ada's wall had changed. They weren't drawings anymore. They were windows. And something was staring out from each one. They say it started with the drawings, but that's not true. The real beginning was the moment Ada stopped blinking. That was when the door opened, when something ancient, patient, and watching, noticed her back. After the power outage, people came to the Nione house with flashlights and crosses, some with prayers, others with petrol. They didn't know what they were more afraid of, the girl who hadn't closed her eyes in nearly 10 days, or the images on her walls that had changed overnight. Drawings no longer looked like drawings. They shimmered slightly in the dim light, as if backlit by some unseen source. You could swear they were moving if you looked too long. Some said they saw blinking in the paper. Others said the eyes in the pictures followed them. Her father was the first to try taking them down. He reached for one, just one, but before his fingers touched the paper, he staggered back, clutching his nose. Blood poured out, thick and fast, staining his shirt and the floor. "She doesn't want them touched," Ada said softly. Everyone in the room froze. Her voice sounded wrong. Not like a child's. Not like hers at all. She was seated cross-legged in the corner, staring at the wall. Still hadn't blinked. Still hadn't slept. But now her hands were twitching, like they were trying to draw even when no pencil was in them. Her mother tried to rush to her. But before she got halfway across the room, she fell to her knees, sobbing, holding her head. "I saw it," she whispered, eyes wide. "In the wall. In the damn wall. No one helped her. They were too busy backing out, making the sign of the cross, whispering prayers. They didn't come back after that. Not until the screaming started again. That night, it was a young boy, 7 years old, who vanished from his bed. His name was Reuben. His parents said he went to sleep clutching his stuffed lion, curtains drawn, door locked. When they came to check on him in the morning, his bed was empty. The window was still closed. And on his wall, carved into the paint with what looked like fingernails, was a perfect drawing of Ada's eye. That was the last straw. A group of villagers, some armed, most trembling, marched back to the Niones with one intention, to burn the evil out. But the house was empty. No one had seen Ada, her parents, or her brother since the night before. The lights were off. The door was open. Inside, every wall had been covered, floor to ceiling. Images upon images, all staring outward. One man swore he saw a version of himself on the living room wall, just his face, pale and open-mouthed, like it had been captured mid-scream. He ran. So did the others. But not everyone made it out. One woman, Julitha, had stayed behind, frozen by the staircase. She claimed she heard breathing, not human breathing. Something heavy wheezing, like lungs that hadn't worked in centuries. She turned to run and saw it, the hallway filled with blinking eyes, all open, all watching, each one slowly closing, one after another in perfect rhythm. She screamed once. Then her body went limp and hit the floor. They dragged her out, unconscious. When she came to, she couldn't speak. Not even a whisper. Her tongue had turned black. Back at the clinic, doctors said there was no sign of trauma. No disease. Just a completely healthy woman whose body no longer responded to language. But she still wrote one word over and over, whenever they gave her a pen: blink. 3 days later, her heart stopped in her sleep. They found her body curled up under the hospital bed, eyes wide, lips stitched shut by her own hair. No one touched Ada's house again. They called it cursed. Sealed it with nails and crosses. Burned sage and goat bones around it. But it didn't matter. Because the drawings had started to appear elsewhere. First at the school, on the chalkboard on textbooks, scratched into the walls of the girls' bathroom. Always the same eye, always with that slight shimmer behind the pupil. Then at the local well, people stopped drawing water. Said the reflection wasn't right. Said they saw Ada in it, just her eyes, floating. By the second week, a fog rolled in. Dense, unnatural, silent. It never cleared, not even during the day. The sun became a pale disk. Birds stopped flying. Dogs stopped barking. The air felt thick, heavy like it was carrying something on its back. People started leaving Itaji. Those who could afford to fled in pickup trucks and overcrowded buses, clutching their children, crossing themselves, warning others not to look at any mirrors, not to answer if someone called their name at night. But some couldn't leave. Those who had seen Ada up close, who had looked into her unblinking eyes, began to change. One woman, a tailor named Yusta, began drawing obsessively. Circles, over and over, until her fingers bled. Then she tore her eyes out with her sewing scissors. Another man, Isaac, blindfolded himself and wandered into the forest. They found him 5 days later, alive but blind, babbling about the curtain behind the world, and the one who watches her sleep. But Ada wasn't sleeping. She was somewhere else now. Hidden. Waiting. And the next person to find her was a 16-year-old girl named Halima. Halima had been Ada's classmate. Not a friend exactly, but not unkind either. She remembered how Ada used to sit alone under the mango tree at lunch, humming strange tunes and watching birds disappear into the clouds. Something pulled Halima back to the house. Not curiosity. Not pity. Something more ancient, more magnetic. She dreamt of Ada standing in a field of mirrors, surrounded by reflections that weren't her own. She dreamt Ada calling her name, but in reverse. And so one morning, she snuck back into the abandoned Nione house. Inside, It was quiet. Too quiet. Not just silent. Hollow. Like sound didn't work there anymore. The air felt too still, like it was holding its breath. She found Ada in her room, sitting exactly where she'd last been seen. Cross-legged. Staring. But her eyes, they weren't just dry anymore. They were cracked. Blood vessels shattered like lightning strikes. The whites of her eyes had thinned to yellow. And in her pupils, tiny, almost invisible, Halima saw movement. Like something was shifting behind the iris. Something watching her back. Ada, she whispered. Ada didn't move. But Halima felt it. The weight of 1,000 gazes pressing on her shoulders. Like she was being watched from every angle, even from inside her own body. Ada's lips parted, and she spoke with a voice that wasn't hers. You looked. Halima tried to run. But her legs wouldn't move. Her feet were rooted to the floor. And the wall behind Ada, those drawings, they began to melt. Not drip. Melt. Like wax under a flame, the ink liquefied and ran together, forming a single massive eye. It blinked once. And when it opened again, Halima was gone. They found her 3 days later, in the school library, curled between shelves of poetry books. She didn't recognize anyone. Didn't speak. Just stared at blank walls and whispered, "Don't blink. Don't blink. Don't." They put her in a hospital in Dar es Salaam. She never recovered. Her eyes refused to close, even in death. Yes, in death. Because one night, the nurse saw her sitting up in bed, drawing with her fingers on the sheets. Eyes wide open. When they got to her room in the morning, she was cold. And carved into the wall above her headboard, in perfectly straight lines. The eye that never blinks is the mouth that never sleeps. She was only the first. No one spoke of Ada after that. But they never found her body. Not even bones. The Nione house collapsed weeks later. Fire. Earthquake. No one knows. But when they searched the rubble, they found no walls, no drawings. Only a mirror unbroken, lying in the ash. And in it, 2 small red eyes. Staring back. Even now, the village is mostly gone. Swallowed by time or fear. No new residents. No tourism. Just stories. Stories of a girl who never blinked and the people who died because they saw too much. But sometimes a new drawing appears. On the side of a road, inside a train station, even on a bathroom wall in a city miles away. Always the same. A single eye. Half open. And always beneath it, scribbled in fading charcoal. She's still watching. You'd think by now people would forget. That time would bury what happened in Italy like so many other rural tragedies. A forgotten place, a forgotten girl. But evil, real evil, doesn't fade. It waits. And it remembers who saw it. Who believed in it. 8 years after the last reported sighting of Ada, a new research initiative was launched. An archival documentation of unexplained African urban legends. A small grant from a European university. They sent students, fresh and eager, armed with cameras and notebooks, thinking they were chasing stories, not stepping into one. Among them was a student named Rachel, a Kenyan sociology major with a focus on rural mythologies. She was smart. Analytical. Not the type to be scared by folktales or ghost stories. When she came across whispers of the girl who never blinked, she was intrigued, not afraid. She thought it was an allegory. Maybe trauma cloaked in superstition. A symbol for isolation or madness. So she went to find out. She wasn't alone. There were 5 of them, 2 women, 3 men. They rented a van and traced the roads to Italy. When they arrived, they found a ghost village. Weeds cracked through asphalt. Buildings leaned like they were trying to fall over but didn't have the energy. No birds. No animals. Not even insects. The silence was so thick it made their ears feel clogged, like they were underwater. They joked about it at first. "This place looks like a horror movie set," one said. Bet the girl's still out here, waiting with those creepy eyes, another teased. But Rachel noticed something none of the others did. The village was gone, but the drawings weren't. Scratched into metal signs, faded on abandoned classroom walls, even burned into the bark of trees, eyes. Dozens of them. Some small, others the size of car tires. Some open. Others, half closed. Like they were watching through sleep. They explored the ruins for hours, documenting everything. Filming. Recording audio. Laughing too loud, pretending they didn't feel the cold fingers brushing the back of their necks. Rachel lingered near the well at the center of the village. The water was gone. Just a black pit now. She peered in and felt something lurch inside her gut. A whisper. Just one word. Her name. But no one was behind her. That night, they camped in the van. No one wanted to sleep in the houses. Too moldy, they said. Too unstable. It wasn't fear. Not yet. But that would change quickly. At exactly 3:33 a.m., the screaming started. Not from outside. From inside one of them. Joseph, the youngest, sat bolt upright in his sleeping bag and began clawing at his own face. He kept repeating a single phrase. She's blinking inside my head. She's blinking inside my head. The others tried to restrain him. But his eyes rolled back, and he collapsed. Dead. A seizure, the doctor in town would later say. But Rachel saw his hands before they wrapped him in the sheet. His fingernails were gone. Torn off. Embedded in his own eyelids. And scrawled on the van's window, in blood. Don't look. Don't blink. They left the village that morning. Or they tried to. Because when they started the van and pulled out, the road didn't end. It twisted. Curled. And then brought them right back to the same ruined well they'd left 20 minutes ago. They tried again. Took another path. Same result. They circled that village for 6 hours. The GPS went dead. Phones wouldn't work. The sun didn't move. Rachel realized something. They weren't in the village anymore. They were inside it. Or worse, it was inside them. They set up base in the school. It was the least destroyed structure and had a roof. But the walls had changed. Where there had once been chalkboards and student doodles, there were now rows upon rows of crude childlike sketches. A girl, drawn again and again. Sometimes crying. Sometimes cross-legged. Always staring. No eyelids. And one new image. Fresher than the rest. Rachel. Drawn in charcoal, her eyes wide. Someone, or something, was still watching. That night, they heard the laughter. It wasn't loud. It wasn't even close. But it was inside their ears. A child's giggle, coming from a throat made of sand and broken glass. One by one, they began hearing things that weren't there. Whispers in their sleep. Scratching on the floorboards. Dreams of mirrors filled with eyes that blinked when they didn't. Then Lillian, the second woman, disappeared. One moment she was beside Rachel, writing in her notebook. The next, she was gone. Vanished mid-sentence. Her pen kept writing on the page for 10 seconds after. Rachel found her shoes by the doorway. Inside them, 2 human eyeballs. Blinking. She vomited and passed out. When she woke up, the drawings had changed again. Now there were 5 figures on the wall. Each one looked like them. All with hollow faces, mouths open like they were screaming. That was the moment Rachel stopped trying to explain things. This wasn't a legend. It was a trap. A web. An Ada. She was the spider at the center. But it wasn't just Ada anymore. No child, no matter how strange, could cause this. Something else had taken her. Worn her body like a mask. Fed on her stare. And now it was using her to find more eyes, more mouths to open, more minds to unravel. Rachel tried something desperate. She took a sharp stone and carved a line across her forehead. Blood flowed fast. But she focused, forced herself to think, to fight. Pain anchored her. She whispered the names of the ones she'd lost. Joseph, Lillian, the others. And that's when she heard it again. Her name. But not whispered. Spoken. From the classroom mirror. There shouldn't have been a mirror. She walked to it, trembling. In it, she saw herself. And behind her, Ada. Or something wearing her. It was taller than it should have been. Arms too long. Mouth sewn shut. Eyes wide, cracked, almost glassy. Ada raised one finger. And pointed. At Rachel. Then the glass shattered, not outward, but inward. Rachel collapsed. When she woke up, she was alone. Everyone else had vanished. The school was gone. The drawings were gone. The road was there again. She ran. Didn't stop for 2 days. Was found dehydrated and delirious on the edge of a main highway. They say she never spoke again. But before she disappeared into a facility in Arusha, she wrote a single phrase on her hospital wall. The girl who never blinked opened something no one could close. They tried to scrub it off. It came back. They repainted. It bled through. And then Rachel was gone. Vanished from her locked hospital room. The cameras glitched for exactly 11 minutes. When they came back on, her bed was empty. In her place, carved into the wall. She saw too much. Now, people report seeing Ada in their dreams. In the corner of a photo. Reflected in the black of their pupils when they look too close in the mirror. Always staring. Never blinking. And the final horror? She's not alone anymore. Years passed. The story slipped through cracks, like water in dry ground. It became myth. Then less than myth. Just another haunted whisper buried in internet forums and forgotten blogs. Some called her the watching girl. Others said she was a metaphor, an urban legend born from grief and fear. But in the town of Bwanj, 2 countries away from Itagi, the drawings started again. They began in a secondary school, inked on the inside of textbooks no one had opened in years. Same eye. Same flickering shimmer just behind the iris. A janitor found a student in the bathroom, trying to peel his own eyes open with paper clips. He said, "She's in the cracks now. Behind the blinks. Between the ticks." People laughed. Until the teachers started seeing her, too. Until the walls in the science lab began to weep ink. And far away, in an old nearly abandoned monastery in northern Malawi, a man named Father Mtemba began to tremble in his sleep. He was the last person still alive who had seen Ada with his own eyes when she was still human. He had tried to forget her. For years, he convinced himself what he saw was madness, grief, trauma. A child's mental break. But when the drawings returned, so did the dreams. Worse now. In them, Ada stood inside a dark cathedral with no ceiling. Her body floated slightly above the ground. Her hair moved in a wind that didn't touch anything else. Her mouth was stitched shut with thread made of ash and teeth. And behind her, something else. A mass. A presence. He couldn't see it fully, not directly. But it pulsed. A thing made of staring. Made of observation. It had no form. Only attention. A sentient awareness. And when it noticed you noticing it, you began to unravel. Father Mtemba had read of such things once. In an older gospel. One removed from the church canon centuries ago. The Book of Threads. In it was a warning. Beware the unseen that watches through the seen. For the eye that opens without blinking shall tear the veil, and behind it, nothing will look back. He'd thought it was metaphor. But now, he remembered something Ada had whispered the first time he met her, just before her silence. They blinked before. But now they don't. Because I don't. The monastery walls had begun to crack. Not from age or decay. But pressure. Like the world outside was pushing inward. The drawings appeared in his room. Always drawn while he slept. And always on the mirror. He couldn't run. He knew that now. But maybe he could contain it. He began to write everything down. Each dream. Each whisper. Every shift in shadow or pattern in the ink. He believed the creature, whatever it was, fed on observation. It moved through awareness. Spread through memory. And most dangerously, through images. When Ada stopped blinking, she stopped filtering. And something used her wide, open gaze like a gate. It had found a mouth in her stare. It had found our world. Father Mtemba believed it had a name, one not spoken but drawn. An ancient sigil etched into the first cave paintings ever found, spirals surrounding a central, lidless eye. The earliest symbols of the Watcher in the dark. A god, maybe. Or not a god at all. Something older. A parasite that lived in silence and saw through every reflective surface. A thing that couldn't blink because it never had to. He called it Namzago. The unblinking. And Ada. Ada had become its lens. Its finger. Its broken compass to walk inside our dreams. It was Rachel's journal that confirmed it. Before she vanished, she had managed to mail her final notes to her mother. In one entry, she described the feel of being watched by something not alive but still aware. Like being seen from the inside out. Not your skin, but your thoughts being peeled open. She wrote. It doesn't need mirrors anymore. It doesn't need Ada. It's in us now. In our memories of her. In the idea of her. That's why the eye appears on walls, paper, even grainy footage. It's spreading through attention. Every time someone hears the story or sees the drawing, they become a crack in the wall. A new blink to enter through. And then one final sentence. She was the door. We are the windows. It wasn't Ada that was killing people. Not exactly. She was the first casualty. The first medium. The first mirror turned inside out. It was Namzago that had bled through her stare. And now it didn't need eyes. Just viewers. In Johannesburg, a YouTuber posted a video titled, I Found the Real Girl Who Never Blinked. It featured grainy footage, overlaid drawings, eerie background music. The video went viral. It also went cursed. 4 of the channel's editors were later found dead in their apartments, eyes wide open, expressions frozen in mid-scream. Their computers melted from the inside. And across each hard drive, embedded in corrupted pixels, was a faint drawing of Ada's face. Now drawn in static. Now blinking. People began scrubbing the internet. Forums were deleted. Accounts vanished. Servers burned. But it was too late. The image was already out. A child in Sweden began drawing spirals in her sleep. A man in Brazil claimed his mirror winked at him. A woman in Lagos tore her own eyelids off after seeing Ada's reflection on the surface of her tea. The infection wasn't biological. It was psychic. Narrative. A virus made of story. And we're helping it spread. Because now you know. You've heard her name. You've imagined her face. Maybe you're picturing her right now. Eyes wide, never blinking, never closing, always watching. Maybe you'll dream of her tonight. Maybe you'll see her just outside your window, even though you live on the 5th floor. Maybe you'll hear her voice. Soft, cracked, whispering. Don't blink. Or they'll see you blink. And then they'll come closer. Maybe you've already blinked once too many times. Maybe something else is staring out through your own eyes now. Because the truth is, the girl who never blinked? She was only the beginning. They say the worst part of the end isn't when it comes. It's when you realize it already started long ago, and you did nothing to stop it. Ada's story didn't go away. Even with servers wiped, tapes burned, and names erased, the memory lived. It hid in sketches half erased on old walls. In words whispered at sleepovers. In the space between heartbeats when the room goes quiet and you swear someone's watching you. Even now, you're still thinking of her. But what if I told you, she's still thinking of you too? It was a quiet researcher from Namibia who made the final connection. Professor Lonnie Keita. She'd been studying memory-based folklore and stumbled across something odd, a repeating symbol hidden in oral stories across the continent. In Congo, they called it Mutu wa Miso Yabul, the one of the white eyes. In Egypt, it was Al-Nazra, the gaze that burns. Even in the sand petroglyphs, dating back thousands of years, was a simple figure, a girl drawn in profile, eyes wide, mouth stitched. Every version of the story ended with the same warning. When she stops blinking, the world forgets how to close its eyes. Keita wasn't like the others. She didn't dismiss it. She didn't sensationalize it either. She listened. And she went back to where it began. Itaji. The heart of the wound. Or maybe, the pupil of the eye. She walked into the village ruins on a dry August morning. No gear. No camera crew. Just her, a leather journal, and a small mirror. No one knows what she saw. The people she passed on the road said she looked like she'd been weeping the whole way there. But her face was dry. Only her eyes were wet. She wasn't gone for long. Just 28 minutes. But when she returned, she was different. Still Keita. Still walking, still breathing. But wrong. She wouldn't speak. Wouldn't eat. Wouldn't blink. They placed her in a high-security psychiatric facility near Dar es Salaam. Monitored constantly. Fed intravenously. No screens, no reflections, no glass allowed in her room. For months, she stood by the wall, tracing spirals into the plaster with her fingers until her nails turned black. Until one night. The guards heard a sound, faint but clear. Clapping. When they entered her cell, she had written a new phrase on the wall. Ada is done watching. Now she's teaching others how. And in her bed was another girl. Alive. Eyes open. Identical to Ada. A copy. A vessel? No one knows. Keita vanished. Her body was never found. The spiral on the wall pulsed under UV light. Some say it moved. Others say it was just a trick of the eye. But the girl they found that night? She never blinked. Not once. And when she smiled, her lips didn't part. Because her mouth wasn't hers anymore. The watchers had begun duplicating. Spreading. Not by blood. Not by bite. But by belief. By exposure. By curiosity. By stories like this one. You thought it was a tale. Something scary to watch, maybe while curled under a blanket, just close enough to feel spooked. But safe. Except, it was never a story. It was a signal. The watchers don't live in shadows. They live in awareness. They don't cross into our world through rituals. They don't need doors. They need eyes. They need yours. And now they have them. Because here's what no one told you. Every time you heard Ada's name. Every time you pictured her face. Every time you wondered, what really happened to that girl? You pulled her closer. You widened the crack. You fed the eye. And now, it's looking back through you. Maybe you'll start seeing the drawings soon. Maybe they'll appear in your bathroom mirror. Or scratched into your ceiling. Or maybe, in your dreams, you'll see her again. Ada. Sitting cross-legged in a school uniform. Mouth closed. Eyes wide. And next to her? Dozens of others. Children. Adults. All motionless. All staring. And behind them, rising slowly, a mass of limbs and eyes, swirling like ink in water. A being made of looking. Namzigo. The unblinking. You'll try to wake up. Try to scream. Try to shut your eyes. But you'll realize you can't anymore. You've forgotten how. Because when Ada stopped blinking, she taught the world to watch without closing. Now there's no veil left. No filter. No protection. She stared too long into something that was never meant to be seen, and now that thing is staring through you. And if you think you're still safe because you haven't looked in the mirror today, just wait. Because the next time you do, you might see something behind your reflection. Just over your shoulder. A girl. Smiling. Still not blinking. And by then, it will already be too late. They're all dead now. Not because of her, but because they believed she wasn't real. So ask yourself, how long can you go without blinking? The end.